Coming up on Mountain News at 5:30, we'll have the latest from the Middle East as the war continues. And Donald Trump Jr. takes the stand in the civil fraud trial against his family and their business.
And more bone-chilling temperatures on the way tonight, but some warmer weather is also looming. Those details coming up as Mountain News at 5:30 starts now.
Dedicated to Southern and Eastern Kentucky, this is WYMT Mountain News at 5:30.
Good evening, I'm Steve Hensley. For the first time in more than 3 weeks, hundreds of people waiting at the border between Gaza and Egypt have been allowed to leave. The development comes as Israel's military took aim again at a refugee camp in Gaza, claiming there are Hamas targets in that area. As the humanitarian crisis intensifies, Jordan, a key ally of the U.S., recalled its ambassador from Israel Wednesday and told Israel's ambassador to stay out of the country. CBS's Tina Kraus has the latest from Tel Aviv.
Hundreds of Palestinians holding dual citizenship left Gaza Wednesday, including some Americans, through the Rafah border crossing into Egypt. Ambulances filled with dozens of injured Palestinians were also allowed to leave. Headed into Gaza, more humanitarian aid, though health officials say the supplies are still just a fraction of what's needed for the millions of civilians living in the Hamas-controlled territory, which has been almost completely cut off since the brutal terror attack on Israel last month. The humanitarian breakthrough comes as Israel intensifies its military operations in Gaza. Hamas says Israeli missile strikes on the northern Jabalia refugee camp killed and injured dozens of civilians. Israel says the strikes killed dozens of Hamas fighters, including a senior commander, and destroyed a tunnel complex. In Jerusalem, mourners gathered for the funeral of one of at least 16 soldiers Israel says have been killed since the start of the ground invasion. While in Tel Aviv, sirens warned of incoming rockets, sending Israelis running to shelters. Israelis we spoke to say every day is a struggle with the heartbreak and anxiety war brings.
You have to take a deep breath to fill the lungs with breath, with air.
To feel life.
To feel life, to go on.
Local markets here are much emptier than usual as Israelis try to find their own way to live through a war they're being told will be long and difficult. Tina Kraus, CBS News, Tel Aviv.
The Hamas-run Palestinian Health Ministry says more than 8,700 Palestinians have been killed in the war, mostly women and children. More than 1,400 Israelis were killed, mostly civilians, who were killed during Hamas's attack on October 7th. Hamas is still holding more than 200 people hostage, including children. The Biden administration pushed Congress yesterday to approve its $105 billion national security supplemental request that includes support for both Israel and Ukraine. The request includes $61.4 billion for Ukraine and $14.3 billion for Israel, as well as funding for border security, humanitarian aid, and Indo-Pacific initiatives. The money for Ukraine and Israel includes funding to give their militaries weapons from the Defense Department.
The President believes that the supplemental request we submitted, in every aspect, in every bucket of funding that we're asking for, is critical for our national security needs. And I would remind that these are urgent requests. That's what the supplemental is all about.
The push for Ukraine aid in yesterday's Senate hearing comes as Republicans in Congress are split about whether to pair funding for Ukraine with support for Israel. Anti-Semitic graffiti, a Sikh man attacked, posters of missing Israelis torn down, and threats and protests on campus reaching a fever pitch. Those are just some of the incidents that continue to take place on college campuses and city streets across the country as Jewish communities report an increase in anti-Semitism, and Muslim and Arab groups say they too are facing threats. CNN's Gloria Pazmino has more.
It's become a common occurrence across school campuses and some communities around the country. Messages of hate scrawled across walls and online, memorials destroyed. The increasingly tense rhetoric and protests following the war between Israel and the Palestinian group Hamas, raising concerns about a rise in anti-Semitism.
This is a threat that is reaching, in some ways, sort of historic levels.
Patrick Day, a 21-year-old student at Cornell University, was arrested Wednesday in connection with a series of anti-Semitic threats he allegedly made against Cornell University's Jewish community.
You're making threats on this random website. Why would you do that? And I think it's really ridiculous.
The threat prompted fear among students.
I really think that it's an attempt to tear us apart. I don't want to be torn apart. I don't want to look at my fellow classmate and think that's my enemy.
It's not just happening in New York. This display outside the University of Minnesota's Jewish Student Center in Minneapolis, showing the faces of Israelis taken hostage by Hamas last month, was also damaged. And in Pittsburgh's historically Jewish Squirrel Hill neighborhood, residents spotted graffiti reading "Death to America, Free Palestine, and I Stand with Gaza," painted at a condo complex on Tuesday.
We're really horrified when this is happening in our own backyard.
In New York, I'm Gloria Pasmino.
Arab and Muslim communities are also reporting an uptick in fear following Islamophobic incidents. The Carter Center is joining a host of other organizations calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. Today, the center put out a statement urging all parties to agree to a ceasefire and end the violence. The statement included a quote from 99-year-old former President Jimmy Carter saying, quote, "We will not learn to live together in peace by killing each other's children." The center is also asking for the opening of humanitarian corridors into Gaza.
We are tracking some dry, sunny, but cold weather across the mountains into your Wednesday evening. Here's a live look from the WYMT studio. You can see not a cloud in the sky this evening, but that temperature is chilly, down to 43 degrees right now. Most of us in the middle to lower 40s and some upper 40s as well, up to 47 for Manchester, 46 in Irvine, 42 for Pikeville, and 40 over in Clintwood, also Grundy. At this hour, up on the radar, a clean sweep as high pressure is the big story for the rest of this week. You can see this area of high pressure over Arkansas, and that will continue to drive our forecast into your Thursday, Friday, and into this weekend. Some more dry, but also some more warmer weather is on the way for this weekend, but we are not warm into tonight. If you have any plans, be sure to bundle up. Those temperatures back in the lower 30s, but some 20s on the way once again as you wake up on Thursday, but then again, some 60s are back by Friday and into this weekend. Those details coming up in just a few minutes. Steve?
Cameron, thank you. New reporting shows newly minted House Speaker Mike Johnson collaborated with a group in the early 2000s that promoted conversion therapy. Conversion therapy is a discredited practice that seeks to change the sexual orientation of gay and lesbian people. Johnson worked as a lawyer at the time. He gave legal advice to an organization called Exodus International and partnered with the group to put on an annual anti-gay event aimed at teenagers. Donald Trump Jr. took the stand today in the civil fraud trial against his family and their business. He is named as a defendant in the $250 million lawsuit brought by the New York Attorney General's office. Trump Jr. and his brother Eric are accused of knowingly participating in a scheme to inflate their father's net worth to obtain financial benefits. The AG's lawyers questioned him about his involvement in financial documents at the center of the lawsuit. Today, former President Trump endorsed Republican Governor Tate Reeves amid a tough re-election fight in Mississippi less than 1 week before Election Day. Reeves, who has endorsed Trump in the 2024 election, is running against Democrat Brandon Presley. Presley has been attacking Reeves about his reported involvement in a scandal in the state regarding the misappropriation of state welfare funds. Today, President Biden announced plans to nominate Kurt Campbell to be Deputy Secretary of State. Campbell has been instrumental in the administration's Indo-Pacific policy in his current role. He currently serves as Deputy Assistant to the President and Coordinator for Indo-Pacific Affairs on the National Security Council. The President's nomination would promote Campbell to the number 2 position at the State Department. Republican Congressman Ken Buck of Colorado will not be running for re-election. Buck cited his party's denial about the 2020 election results as part of the reason behind his decision not to run for re-election. He was one of only 8 Republicans who voted to oust former House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. Buck has also been an outspoken critic of his party's impeachment inquiry into President Biden. The murder trial of the woman accused in the May 2022 killing of 25-year-old elite cyclist Anna Mariah Wilson began today. Prosecutors say Caitlin Armstrong was fueled by romantic jealousy when she shot Wilson. In addition to the murder charge, Armstrong also faces a federal charge of unlawful flight to avoid prosecution. She went to Costa Rica right after Wilson's death and was missing for more than 40 days. Portland Public Schools, serving nearly 50,000 students, were closed today because teachers went on strike. The union representing more than 4,000 certified teachers in the district said it is officially on strike to have its demands met. The school district and the union have not yet been able to reach an agreement on a new 3-year contract. The union wants a 23% cost of living increase in the next 3 years. Coming up on Mountain News at 5:30, most new cars are covered by at least one kind of warranty, but how familiar are you with what's covered? We hear from a man who ended up taking a dealership to court after finding an issue with his car that was still under warranty.
And a stretch of dry and warmer weather is on the way as we end the work week. Those details after this break.